I'd like to call this meeting to order for a special work session for the City Commission in regards to Walnut Street. Roll call, please.
Sardak.
Here.
Burdick. Here. Gross. Here. Johnson.
Here.
Knopf. Here. Mybaugh.
Here.
Minor. Here. Moser.
Here.
Mayor Hoffman.
Present.
City Attorney Denver.
Here.
We have a quorum, so we will continue. Probably just a note, if anybody wants to sign on, Dwayne informed us that the City of Yankton site is available for your Wi-Fi, including our commission. I know there's an Artec guest, but there's also City of Yankton. You want us to use the City of Yankton? No password needed, right? All right, thank you. We're going to begin with, anybody need to join me, Yankton SD, for the presentation. First, we'll hear from the city on a presentation, then we'll allow enough time for some question and answers from the public as well as the commission. Go ahead.
All right, tonight the discussion for the work session is the reconstruction plans for Walnut Street between 2nd and 4th. In the neighborhood, in the entire downtown, a lot has been accomplished over a number of years, decades as a matter of fact, all the way from working through the cleanup of the Jensen scrap metal property as part of the Brownfields project, more recently things like the Northbridge Plaza project and the Calmers that have been installed this year. Tonight's, it represents another big step in that planning process that's ongoing for infrastructure plans downtown to help support, our public-private partnerships that we have with the business owners down there. You might remember that the discussion for this specific project began earlier this year during the budget sessions when the commission started to talk briefly about design elements that could be a part of this, and then determined that, hey, it would be best to wait until the Design South Dakota project was more complete and we had the results of that, so that we could mold that information in with the previous plans that the city has worked through for the areas down there. Through that Design South Dakota process and planning processes before that, we're happy to say that the public has had a lot of opportunity to be involved. Most of those gatherings have been pretty well attended, so we feel pretty confident that anybody that has wanted to be involved has had the opportunity. Tonight is a work session, so it's meant to be interactive, but as Mayor Hoffner said, there's a lot of information in the visuals you're going to see tonight from Adam and Brad and Todd. And it might be best if the questions, unless you have something real specific about a comment they make, if the questions and the interaction could wait until after the presentation, because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of things you're going to wonder while they're talking and they're going to be answered 1 or 2 frames later, so that would be really helpful. And the goal tonight is, obviously no action takes place at the work sessions, but the goal tonight is to leave here with enough consensus that we can, as your staff, start to spend money on engineering on specific design elements for the project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Adam and we'll get going.
Good evening. As Dave said, we've been taking input from the community, various entities, and Brad Mosier and the engineering staff have put together some slides and some videos tonight to present that information of what we've done already down in that area and what possibly could be done. So we'll get that started. I'll let Brad narrate.
Brad, please.
The videos.
Turn the lights up here down a little bit. Oh, Dwayne got it.
I'm not sure I need the microphone because I'm usually pretty loud to begin with, but I'll use it anyway. As they said before, the engineering staff's been working on this for a little while now, and we've had a lot of input from various entities. We used different resources to come up with some of the slides and the videos that you'll see tonight. And just to mention some of those sources of input, you know, Design South Dakota was a big one. That was months and months and months of work put in to give us a base for our design, basically. The Meridian District, we attended some of the meetings that they had with the businesses downtown, took that input into consideration, listened to the March Commission meeting where there's a discussion about what should be done, not done down there. Individual input, we've had calls from individuals, people stopping in the office to talk to us. The SDSU, I don't know if a lot of you got to go to that on Saturday, but they were down here and presented what, some boards and stuff for ideas down there also. Stockwell Engineering and District 3 took part in some of the stuff you'll see tonight. So, design considerations. When we were going through this, some of the bigger points that were discussed were two-way traffic versus one-way traffic, total versus a total street closure for Walnut Street. So 3 very different ideas on 1 to 2 blocks of roadway. Parking was a big consideration. What do we do? Do we eliminate? Do we keep it? You know, do we change it? How do we slow vehicular traffic in this area? With what we're trying to do down here and create more pedestrian-friendly environment, how do we keep that traffic, the speeds of the traffic down, provide a safe environment for everybody? And then a big issue was how do we tie the downtown business area to Riverside Park? And I think with some of these slides you'll see what we're going to try to accomplish. So the design started probably a couple years back or even further back, as Dave was talking about the history. The first rendition along 2nd Street was painted lines on the pavement. In a lot of intersections, those are no longer there. It was basically a test to see, you know, how the columns would fit and how people would respond to something like that down that area. Finally, the decision to move ahead with design was made, and the last winter we spent the winter designing, and this last summer constructed several of the intersections with Calmers. The 2nd Street Calmers basically utilize the same general curb layout as 3rd Street Calmers, and if you pay attention up here, you can see what got accomplished today on a couple of these intersections. We're going to be showing basically Douglas intersection, which is this one, and the Capitol Street intersection. But like I said, we utilize the same general curb layout as was used on 3rd Street. We used colored concrete to accent the Calmers, incorporated some of the same scheme as the Meridian Plaza has, and Todd will be talking about a lot of the landscaping that they're looking at doing down in some of these corners now. And what these do is provide an outdoor area seating, or an outdoor seating area or a landscape area. Other things that we're talking about or thinking about doing on these 2 intersections right here is a parking lot improvement, and what is talked about, and I'll show you here, over in this corner right here. There's a possibility of taking a parking spot or 2 and extending this area on the intersection into that, which would create a lot of possibilities on those corners. This is Capitol Street, so this would be the northwest corner, and then you have Douglas, which would be, you have the 2 Douglas Avenue corners. Adam's going to spin that around for us. Right here. Okay, you take these 2 intersections. He's getting crazy on me. You could take these 2 here and expand this corner, and then you could do the same thing over on the other side. And we're talking, the possibilities are endless on what we want to do on these things. You could do outdoor seating. You could do, you know, just landscaping that would be incredible. So it's basically, you know, I'm going to leave that up to Todd what he does on those. So I'm not going to hit too much on those 2 areas. But as we get to Walnut, which is a bit what everybody's really here for, what we're looking at doing is basically the same section from 2nd to 4th. It's going to be what we're proposing is a 62-foot back of curb to back of curb. There'll be no median down the middle. The travel lanes would be 12 foot wide, which if you look at the existing, in this area right here, there's quite a bit of, I'm going to call it extra space. This section is a lot wider than what it really needs to be to function, how we want it to function. So what we're going to do is basically put that road on a diet, narrow it down, and provide 12-foot travel lanes. By doing that, we're going to leave the parking as is, and by doing that, we're going to actually create 4 additional feet on each side of the road. And that can be used for sidewalk cafes, landscaping, however we see fit. The sidewalk orientation, this is one of the first steps in our design, was a hand-drawn sketch basically. The sidewalk orientation, as you can see on the east side, we maintain the 10-foot trail across 2nd Street till we get to the intersection, and then we narrow down to a 6-foot. And then on 2nd Street, it's just a 6-foot sidewalk throughout. Then we get to the debate of 2-way versus 1-way in street closures. I did some research, got on the internet, read some articles concerning what other communities have gone through, and there's 3 common points that kept popping up over and over and over again. And some of them may not apply in our situation, but I think in a lot of them do. 2-way is simpler to navigate and less confusing for drivers, especially visitors. I think that goes without saying. I mean, if you're not familiar with this area and you drive into it, you're going to want a 2-way street as opposed to a single direction. 2-way provides more exposure to businesses along the roadway. It makes sense again, right? If you got traffic going both ways, you're going to have more people seeing your business. And 1-way streets correlate with higher speeds and decreased level of driver attention. And the reason that is because if you think about it, they mimic a highway. Now, is that going to probably be a case in downtown Yankton with a 1 block of 1-way? I don't know. But that's what I've learned through my research. And there's actually quite a few communities that have had 1-way streets and are looking at turning them back to 2-ways. Just because of those 3 reasons, and more reasons, I guess, but specifically those 3. And when you look at like closing the street, some of the issues that come up with that are, permanently closing streets, limit access to patrons. That's obvious. In this case, it would limit access for deliveries, and they tend to interrupt flow and promote the use of private parking lots for traffic circulation. So, in this case, we've got to the north, Stockwell Engineering would be up to the north here. And if we were to close, even a portion of this roadway, people come up here, and it's a natural tendency. I've seen this in construction projects all the time. It's a natural tendency to take the easiest way out. And so you're really promoting the use of private property at that point in time. So I'm not sure that that's something we really want to do. Like I said earlier, the parking, it's going to remain same angled parking that's currently there. The proposal that we're showing here minimizes parking loss by promoting more outdoor space. We lose 7 parking stalls along this roadway, and 6 of them are because of approaches like this that currently have parking in front of them, and we're going to eliminate that. How do we slow down traffic on this roadway? Some of the elements that we're going to incorporate or try to incorporate are traffic calmers at the intersections. And now these are several advantages. This is a rendering from District 3. What these do are they slow traffic by bottlenecking the area for vehicular traffic. They provide additional outdoor space for various uses. As you can see, we've got a fire feature here, a shade feature over here. Shortens the distance for the pedestrians. It's a lot easier for people to maneuver this 24-foot section than it is this 60-foot section. And it makes them feel a lot safer. Not only that, it puts the pedestrians out here in the sight of vehicles and in their sight so they can see the vehicles coming. So it puts them out there so they can see. Another element that we're trying to incorporate is the raised intersection. So basically what happens on this is these three areas here, that one, and that one there, are actually ramps. So the raised intersection creates a ramped situation requiring vehicles to slow down before entering the intersection. So these would bring this whole intersection area up with the crosswalks, including the crosswalks, up to the elevation of the curb, basically. So it's one flat area for the most part. So what it does is, like I said, slows the traffic coming in, and then it also extends the Meridian Plaza design. What you have back in here, it extends that design to the north, into the intersection, and onto these Calmers. Another aspect that was talked about as part of the Walnut Corridor was mid-block Calmers. Part of the issues we ran with incorporating mid-block Calmers was that, you know, you're taking parking away in front of some of these businesses. It was difficult to incorporate them into this design with access into the parking lots and approaches. And quite honestly, we would prefer parklets that were discussed at one of the subcommittees for the South Dakota, Design South Dakota, because they're mobile and they provide flexibility. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with parklets. I don't know if Todd brought something for that, but it's basically an area that would take up a couple parking spots that you could pick up and move from place to place to place in the street. And it'd be something I think that we would push the Meridian District to kind of lead and decide where those would go and who could get them when. And you know, it's something you could do 1 month this person has it, the next month this person has it type thing. So, and then of course during the winter, they remove them from the street and it makes it easier for snow removal. And then finally, I guess what we tried to create in this whole design is a uniform design concept. And what I mean by that is we wanted to tie the downtown retail business with the Riverside Park, keeping a common theme throughout Meridian District by utilizing the same color scheme and concrete designs and just some other landscape materials. So with that, I think I kind of made everything. I'll give it to Todd.
So we will work with Stockwell Engineers to come up with a landscape architect plan for the areas of Walnut Corridor. We have 2 open landscaped areas right now on corners of 2nd Street. One would be by Willa's Bistro, the new building that they're, not new building, but the new restaurant area that they're working on there, and then also by the corner of Twist and Pine. So again, as you've been down 2nd Street, if you've seen the Calmers, the one has rock in it now, the other we're still working on, it has dirt in it. But those are 2 areas. Parking lots on the northwest corner of 2nd and Douglas, and then also the parking lot on northeast corner of 2nd Douglas, and they talked a little bit about that. But we're all trying to get that themes carried over from the plaza. We're looking at drought tolerant, perennials, we want color through the seasons, tree colors and things like that. And everything that we've heard so far from the public and Design South Dakota was really reaffirmed this weekend when the SDSU students were in town, the architect class, as they presented this past Saturday. And the themes that we continue to hear is more seating both in block and on the corners, more social spaces, and like I was saying, more landscaping that is attractive to the eye when the pedestrians are walking around, which was interesting to see if you were there on that day, they had it broken down into percentages where they're looking not only at width of vision, length of vision, how far you can see based on things that might be in the street or along the street, like big trees or whatever, and also incorporating sky. So looking at the height of buildings and the height of trees and how much sky is open. And so it was really interesting to see their take on it and again, just reaffirm what we'd already known. But what you see here is Second and Walnut looking north. This would be the plaza area. And again, you saw a different rendering from District 3. Again, this landscaping part of it is still fluid. They're trying to lock in on the corridor and the curb lines. Landscaping we have a little bit of time with. But anyway, what you see is, again, the perennial Carl Forrester flowers, or grasses I should say, sorry. Daylilies to give color that are perennials. Again, the open landscaped areas that you can do the plantings in, whether it's trees, depending on space that you have available, trees, the perennials down on the ground level. Also incorporating the limestone benches that we have in the plaza to create seating along these landscaped areas, so not necessarily using benches in those areas. We can put benches along the sidewalks in other areas when you're on the concrete, but again, in the landscape, and we've got some pictures here to show you in a minute. But anyway, on the other side, same type of deal, landscaping. And as we've always talked about, carrying the shade features from the south heading north along that First Dakota parking lot, which is to the east of KYNT. Again, numbers right now that shows 5. A lot of it may change. Again, this is just to kind of give you an idea of what could be. Fire feature in the middle again. And again, we've talked about fire feature on this side, talked about fire feature on this side. So again, things are fluid that way, but things that we've talked about, trash cans, bike racks, benches. And then we're also thinking about bollards. We have lighted bollards in the plaza right now. Half of the bollard, on those that you see there, normally the light would be 360 degrees, but we have in the plaza half of that 360 covered to throw light just one way. So again, there's a little bit of concern that we have if we've got 360 lights here and throwing out light into the intersection and cars coming down 2nd Street, and does it make it confusing? So we still have some of that debate going on. And again, you also see the round planters like you see on 3rd Street in some of these areas too. So if there's a lot of concrete and we don't want to break up concrete and put landscaping down in the ground, we still have the availability to do some color with perennials, or sorry, with annuals that we don't do in the ground openings where you have the perennials and drought tolerant. We obviously water every day of the summer, once or twice a day, and those round planters can have annuals, and we can water those, so now you can get the color from the annuals that you may not always get from the perennials, depending on what type of the season you're in. But anyway, next slide, please. So for a little bit closer up, this is the open landscaped area by Willoughby's. So Willoughby's sits over here. This big patio area will become an outdoor seating area. That is our understanding. So again, what you see pulled over from the plaza to help with seating is our limestone benches with the granite stones in front of them. We got the Carl Forrester grasses. You got daylilies around the outside, and it's hard to see, but there would be crimson barberry, which is the dark leaf barberry in the middle, and then we have a tree going up in that area. Again, one of the things that we'll look at, which we heard from South Dakota students, that we've heard from business owners in the past, but this was interesting to hear from the SDSU students, their take on it, is figuring out like this area by Willoughby's that is open and away from buildings, that might be the appropriate place to put some bigger shade trees, whereas the one tree that was pointed out to us is the one in front of Ben's Brewing. Very mature shade tree. Half of it has been trimmed back from the building quite a bit, so you have the other big half hanging out over the street. And again, just from their take as architects and what they would design things is, when you're on that corner looking east past Ben's, that tree blocks views of buildings, blocks views of the sky. So we need to take as staff, a little bit better look downtown and see which trees maybe have outgrown their useful life. And again, we have business owners that have complained to us through the years about trees being too big and blocking signage and rubbing against buildings. So now is the time, I think, for us to really incorporate everything together. And so that was in front of Willoughby's. Again, we have the open landscape area that we need to do that similar type of thing in front of Twisted Pine. Again, that's a bigger corner away from buildings, so we tried to save the big cottonwood tree that is there, so we'll see how that goes in time, because we did have to disturb some roots. But again, if it's away from buildings, there's not a lot of visual behind it, we can maybe save some of the bigger trees. Otherwise, some of the other ones we need to maybe take down and not eliminate completely, but find a better species of tree for downtown that's going to be a little bit more manageable. And we're going to talk to some other communities too, like Brookings. There may even be, they're letting trees only grow so long before they move them out to move other ones back in. So again, there's some things that we need to talk and figure out from a maintenance standpoint. But anyway, features that you'll see incorporated into the landscaping plan: up Walnut, on those two open areas we talked about, the parking lots on the northwest corner of 2nd and Douglas, parking lot on northeast corner of 2nd and Douglas. We have some of these historic looking benches downtown currently. We only have about 5 of them. 2 of them are against the Stockwell building. I think there's one on the north and one on the east side. But anyway, so the historic benches, and again, those can go in areas where you have concrete underneath them. They're going to be up against a building. That ties in with the historic look downtown. Of course, our limestone benches that you find in the plaza with the granite in front of them, those, which is similar to some design work that we saw from Mankato, Minnesota, that we really liked. If it's going to be in a landscape bed, then that is where we would use that seating element. Again, you've got it in a landscaping bed, not up against a wall or anything like that. The colored concrete, trying to, again, carry over the themes that we have in the plaza that now have been applied to the Calmers, will be applied in the middle of that raised intersection. We have planter curbs in the plaza made of Corten steel, so we'll see if we can carry that over into anywhere else. Otherwise, some of the different areas along Walnut, the corridor, may have raised curbs around them, again, to help keep the landscaping in when you have rains and winds and things like that, which some of our landscape areas right now don't have curbs around them, and we struggle with our wood mulch if that's the surfacing we're using. Trash cans, again, there are some trash cans downtown currently on the corners that are not the most attractive. Looking again at changing things out, making sure that we're tied in with whatever trash cans we're using in the Walnut corridor, and then matching up with the other ones downtown. This is just an example of the light poles, the flower baskets on the light poles, and the round planter that you find by that. Light pole, again, there's no open pit there to plant down in the ground, so we can add color and flowers just like we've been doing. And again, that you're aware of, that the lamp posts, stop sign poles, trash cans, other things are being painted black in that area to, again, offset the Meridian District from the rest of town. He threw in a shade tree, some different shade trees that you could see if we have, again, away from buildings, more open areas versus up in that tight corridor in a sidewalk right next to a building. Probably not going to use the shade trees, going to go with the columnar maples or oaks or whatever, some other type of trees that we can choose. Again, you got the shade feature that you see in the plaza, carrying that north. The bollards, again, show up on here just to show it. Again, reminder that we need more bike racks on our corners downtown. We have a few, but we need to add to that. The Carl Forrester grasses, I think that's the crimson barberry. That there you can see a little bit better with the dark leaves. Of course, the daylilies, which everybody's familiar with. Wood mulch in most areas. The one landscape area where we probably won't use wood mulch is by the new Willoughby's Bistro building. Again, if you're familiar with that intersection, in front of the U-Haul building across the street, so the U-Haul building to the west, they have rock and nice landscaping along the curb. So there is also a drain pit in here, a storm sewer drain pit. So because of that, we'll cover it with fabric, but we're thinking we'll use rock in that one to kind of match that corner, so that corner has a little bit more continuity to it. But otherwise, we'll use in the downtown area. Most of the other areas will have the landscaped mulch in it. So I think that touched on all the things I needed to talk about. The other thing on Walnut too, Brad had talked about the bump outs halfway down the intersection. The other thing to remind too is as we look at that landscape plan up Walnut Street, we have to avoid doors going in and out of buildings also. So we want landscaped areas, but we don't want them right in front of doors going into buildings, and there are quite a few. Stockwell has one on the east side of the building, and so does Jim Schramm. And then over on the brewery side, there's a couple buildings, and there's Larson's Carpet, and up the street, Murph's Mall, the old Murph's Mall, and the old Social Security Administration building, Riverfront Event Center there. So there's doors. So it isn't like we can do just one long landscape bed. There's going to have to be gaps and breaks. The other thing that came out of that walking tour was the brewery, the smokestack, and keeping that as a focal point. So when you're on Walnut, a couple things: not using big shade trees in these two areas right out in front of these buildings, because that's going to block the view down Walnut of your plaza and your bridge. So back over here, if you got some space against the parking lot, maybe you could do a shade tree. But out here on the street, you're probably not going to do large shade trees. But then also, again, on that Walnut corridor, having those gaps where you have doors allows people to still look up and see that smokestack. So part of the SDSU students, there were 4 walking tours done, or 8 maybe, I can't remember. Maybe it was 8 walking tours. 4 of them were with locals. 4 of them were with students.
Question about continuing north on Walnut. So will there be anything from 3rd to 4th Street? Just the same sort of 12-foot lanes, more green space in front of those buildings?
Yeah, I can talk landscaping. They can talk curb lines. So as you go north of 3rd Street, so as you're heading to 4th, we talked about on the old post office corner and the old Erickson building across the street. Again, there's new culmers there, putting our round flower beds like you find down in the district. Again, just as an entry point to draw the view. As you get over on Douglas, we actually have a median there with the 9/11 memorial and flagpole. But on this corner, again, there's not a lot going on green-wise, so we can use our round flower planters there. And then as you move down, yeah, there would be landscaping. Along that corridor, there are a lot of mature ash trees. So again, we know that the ash borer is coming. If they're mature, been around a long time, we're changing curb lines. Now's the time probably to take those down and reincorporate other trees. So there will be some landscaping down through that area, similar to what we're doing as we head south. Again, nothing solid though.
As far as the curb line, the plan is to keep the same typical section all the way through from 2nd to 4th. So we'll gain that same 4 feet on each side north of 3rd Street. If within the intersection itself at 3rd Street, we didn't plan on doing too many changes to that intersection. Although from what I understand, there is some spalding and some of that concrete and everything, so that might give us the opportunity to put some colored concrete or landscaping behind that curb within that intersection. But for the most part, it's going to be the same cross-section, same section all the way up.
The only other comment I'd make then is on the mature trees is the buckling of the concrete. And I was just looking at, it's everywhere where the tree gets more than 12 inches. It buckles the concrete.
And we've had that. I've been in town 10 years. I think that struggle was going on before I came to town. It's a conversation we have probably every summer, maybe more than once a summer. Again, we want to be, I believe the history is that the city government was behind getting trees in the downtown area. And again, in other parts of town, right of way, those trees are supposed to be maintained by the property owner when it comes to trimming the trees up. When it comes time the tree is diseased, dead, or hazardous, the city comes in and takes it down, takes out the stump, and then the property owner can replant. In the downtown, it's a little bit different because there's no setback to the buildings, and the city, again, was a part of that. So our philosophy may be changing a little bit. We've tried to be pretty solid in, we need trees downtown. We don't want to eliminate them. But I think what we've heard consistently from building owners and property owners is we're not asking to eliminate them altogether, but if they're awful big and they're buckling our concrete, can we look at doing something different? And again, now that we have a plan, now that we've heard it from multiple people, multiple years, it's probably time to change our philosophy a little bit that way. So yeah, you are correct.
Yeah, and I also think, and something you can definitely talk to the building owners, is as you put green space in and some of the different grasses and things, you know, that probably lessens the need for whether they want trees or not. But I would think a more ornamental tree that really is limited in height.
Yeah, if you're out in the downtown area, the best tree to look at, because it's got a little bit of maturity, there's a couple of them. I think one is right in front of the post office building on the east side. There's a columnar oak tree there that you see is got some good height on it, but it sure doesn't get very wide. And I think there's a columnar oak in front of the Charles Gurney, again, the dental office, or it was a dental office, and now it's Servant's Heart Clinic. Again, a couple weeks ago, we just got a call from them. They have 2 ash trees, and it's as bad a buckling of sidewalks as we've seen anywhere in the downtown. And so we're working with them to get the trees out of there and repair sidewalks and get new trees put in there. But by that Charles Gurney, across Kitty Corner on the northwest corner, there is a columnar oak also. Again, they grow nice and tall eventually, just don't get the width on them to cause the problems that we've seen in some of the other areas. And again, hopefully monitoring roots, making sure in areas that we plant, the opening is now much bigger than what you see in currently downtown. They were planted in awful tight squares, and it is what it is.
Any more questions or comments?
So
Step
trees
up to
are
the-
one thing. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So trees are one thing. Highline wires would be another. I'd be very curious to know to what extent, if any, we could be proposing at the same time to bury some electrical. I can tell you that's one of the hardest things about our downtown when it comes to marketing our downtown from above. You probably noticed it from the video. Those highline wires are just a mess. And I feel bad because the brewery has this amazing view, and you got a bride and the groom in the corner of the brewery, and they want to take a picture, and right behind them is not the Meridian Plaza. It is this ugly highline wire. So I'm just curious to know a little bit more about where we're at with that.
So any burying of those things would be a project in cooperation with Northwestern Energy, and Northwestern Energy doesn't volunteer typically to assist in funding those activities. One of the things that we learned on Saturday, specifically in looking at some of the alleys, was the architecture students and their professor kind of embraced some of that look as Yankton's historic industrial downtown image. So a perspective I never thought of, but interesting nonetheless, and I think that would be selective, but we can discuss the possibility and the expenses associated with those types of actions, sure.
Gary, want to step up to the microphone? Say your name, please.
Like all good West Wing press people, I have a two-part question. Is it part of the program to try and reduce the flow of traffic along 2nd Street to make it safer for people traveling from the Meridian Bridge up into the 3rd Street area and the other way round? And if that is the case, then why was one particular method of calming and reducing traffic not considered? And that is to make the junction, which we see at the bottom of that picture, two-way, but single lane with prioritized flow either from the east or from the west. It's a very well-established system in Europe, both in commercial and in residential areas, to dissuade people from using a street, yet theoretically keeping it accessible in both directions. And you make it just a single lane there, which also makes it easier for people to cross the street. And you either you make the signage priority from the east or priority from the west. But I didn't hear that mentioned at all.
So I can't address the second part of that question because, quite frankly, I hadn't ever heard that discussed or considered. The first part of that question, since 2003 at least, we've been planning for 2nd Street to become less vehicle-centric, and it used to be a state highway.
Yep.
And the whole plan is to continue to narrow it down with the calmers and with plantings and other aesthetics that would make it make vehicles slow down. Now, the proposal here is with the ramp on Walnut Street to make vehicles slow down. I had not heard the head-to-head, one at a time,
Well, it's not
two-way
necess-
stop sign
It's not
sort of-
necessarily one at a
sort
time.
of
I've got plenty of drawings to show you if you're interested.
philosophy.
But it works very, very well, and it dissuades traffic from going down because they have to wait for traffic coming in the other direction. And yet, theoretically, the street is still open to two-way traffic.
I think we're at a point where we could maybe handle a roundabout at some at some juncture.
Don't
That
get
would
me
be
started
something
up.
else we'd have to. That might be something else. That might be something else that we'd have to consider together.
Any more questions or comments?
I think I'm loud enough without the microphone. I don't know if you guys know that we're looking at doing some different things with the riverfront and with the brewery. One of the things that we've been exploring is putting a zip line on the top of the chimney of the brewery and having them land someplace. We have a company that also does zip lines in like Dubai that's willing to come here and do a feasibility study, but the problem has been where would the zip line end and how would you get those people up there, which usually requires quite an extensive staircase and then a bridge over to the top of the chimney. Where I had proposed for them to land is on the corner of 3rd and Walnut, because you're talking thousands of people, and having those people land on 3rd and Walnut would have all those people walking around in the downtown, hopefully spending money. And so with that in mind, we were looking at how do we put a town square on the corner of 3rd and Walnut, and taking it back to where the dance was it the 4th of July or the 3rd of July, and then creating not a total roundabout, but the people that would come down Walnut Street would then turn around and go back up Walnut Street instead of coming all the way up to 3rd Street. The other thing is that the original plan for what was the Fannells building was originally called the Great Gatsby, and it was all designed for small stores. It was kind of like a mall. An architect drew it out, and somebody came and said, geez, I'd really love to have a wedding in there. So then you always go where the money is, and the government took occupancy, and that's what we ended up going. We would like to go back to the original concept for that building, which is all small stores. Now you would say, well, why would I want to have a bunch of small stores and then have no parking in front of the building? Well, retail isn't, oh, I'm going to go here anymore because there's too many opportunities. It's more like spontaneous buying. It's where people are excited and they have fun and they're doing impulse buying. So you have to combine the 3 E's for a successful place, which is entertainment, excitement, and education. And the Fantles in the downtown can surely have all those 3 things. And plus having thousands of people land on a zip line, off of a zip line, and then having going into that building, or walking the downtown, or creating a town square right there, would create more of a chance of success than just building retail, which is really hard. Retail or cafes, which are really hard. So what I'd like to do is I would like to have the opportunity to do a drawing and showing what's possible in a town square outside the Riverfront Event Center and Walnut Street.
Thank you. Any questions? Anybody else like to comment on Walnut Street?
Just so the audience knows, Mr. Mayor, thank you to the audience for going to the mic and speaking, because this is live streamed, and that's why we're using the microphones instead of just talking in the crowd. Thank you.
You have to identify yourself.
Yeah.
And your address, please.
No, not my address. I've been involved in this for quite a while. I'm still involved in the Downtown Improvements Group, though. And I'm glad Cena brought the town square up, because I wasn't sure how to get into this. But originally, when the Walnut Street from 2nd to 3rd was being discussed on what to do with it, It was to turn it into a gathering place that would invite people to walk down from 3rd to 2nd to the plaza. It was a place to have a big fire pit to hang around. It was a place to have a little performance stage for people to play on. It wasn't to keep, you're going to take out 2 lanes of traffic and parking on each side, and you're going to put back in 2 lanes of traffic and parking on each side. I don't see where the expense in that's justified. If you're going to do what the drawings propose, leave the street alone and just put a couple of bump outs in and put your fire pit and some benches and call it good. It's still all parking like it is now. I guess I was under the impression, and maybe it's changed in the last year or so, but you know, all the charrettes that we went to downtown last fall with Design South Dakota, parking wasn't even a 10% concern for anybody that looked at that block. If you go to Rapid City's Town Square, you go to Falls Park, I mean, there's no streets running through that. There's no parking lots inside there. I mean, if it's going to be kept a street for parking, then that's fine. Just build it the way it looks. If it's going to be supposed to be a corridor with a town square, bringing people downtown and directing them down toward the river, then I think you need to take a big picture look at this. You know, I know, Nathan, you're a strong towns advocate. You can't be in favor of replacing a 2-lane road with a 2-lane road. That's, but I mean, if that's what it's going to be, then, you know, proceed with your plans. But if that's, you know, the concern about the parking is just because you're used to parking in Yankton in front of your store. There's still 2-lane paved roads around all 3 sides of both of those blocks. And there's still a north-south and an east-west alley through both of those blocks. There's plenty of access. I drove downtown Friday night of Ribfest. 2 blocks of Main Street were closed to parking. There was an event in the event center. There was 6 cars total on both sides of that road and those parking lots. 6 cars. That's not... If you want to have an event center and a place for people to gather and go, then take your last chance and look at this. Take a big picture look at what you could do with that street instead of just replacing it with what you've already got.
Thank you.
Have I preached enough? Sorry.
I'm Bill Schaefer. I'm affiliated with Endless Treasures. That's one of the businesses there on 2nd and Walnut. In a way, I tend to disagree. I think we need the 2-way road, not just walking traffic there. That business has been there 17 years. Larson's Carpet's been there probably as long as that, if not more. And what I do agree, I don't understand why you tear up a perfectly good road with the sidewalks. The sidewalks in front of our store go out 15 feet. Across the street, they go out 16 feet. So I don't know how much more, you know, foot traffic you need as far as that goes. But as far as just tearing up a road to tear it up, and as far as thinking it's too wide, I walked off Cedar Street today on the south ends, and they're just as wide. I went to Capitol, and they're just as wide. It's roughly 22, 23 steps on all 3 streets, Walnut, Capitol, and Cedar. So as far as it being too wide, I don't understand that part. But I do think we need to keep the 2-lane traffic there at least. And is there a timetable on when this would be started and completed?
Yeah, the plan at this point is a 1-year construction, so it would be bid next January, February if this moves forward from this stage. Construction in the spring and summer, done by fall. So it would be.
So it would be a complete year that these businesses.
It would be a complete. It would be done in as quickly as possible in 2018.
And this goes from 2nd to 4th Street, right?
Correct.
And all these businesses along there would be affected by that.
Yeah, that's street construction
Yeah.
does that. And the thing that needs to be remembered too is the pavement, if I'm not mistaken, Adam, correct me, I mean, it's due for replacement just from the pavement standpoint, otherwise we wouldn't be having this discussion. It's that time in its life cycle to, just like we did 23rd Street a couple of years ago, it's that time in its life cycle to be replaced.
So it'd be they're gonna tear up Second to Fourth all in one shot? Was that how that's gonna be?
Brad's going to be able to answer that question better than me.
I missed the question.
Is it all gonna be tore up in one shot, Second to Fourth?
You know, I would imagine that it completely is decided by the contractor. A lot of times they like to do phasing to where they rip out one block and complete a lot of the concrete installation prior to moving on to the next block. We like to see that done too. We actually push for that to be done. But we understand that they're under schedule too when they sign the agreement with us. So that's what we would push, but we work with the contractor on that.
So recently, Douglas Avenue was redone this way. All of 3rd Street was done in a similar fashion a number of years ago. It's just when the pavement has reached its useful life and you do have a street replacement project that you have to do, that's the time to consider whether or not you want to make any adjustments in what's there.
Dave, I would add this too. The moment we start tearing concrete up and start putting new concrete in, there's a lot of ADA requirements that we have to follow, and that's why you'll see in some of the slides, or that you saw earlier, some of the slides that we had where the sidewalk was designated, a designated area, that has to meet certain standards. And all the concrete on both sides can beat whatever slope that needs to be, but when you're talking sidewalk and ADA requirements, there's just specifications that we need to meet. So, yeah, like on the one that Adam has up there now, the big long white strips are designated sidewalk areas.
So refresh my memory on our budget, then we've got a street replacement in that area next year or the year after? So this would fall into that. It wouldn't be as expensive doing all this if we do it at the same time.
So this project was budgeted for 2018, and we got into the design discussion prior to the Design South Dakota thing, and then you decided to wait until after Design South Dakota information, including last Saturday, was available to look at concept details. Tonight's discussion is to try and decide essentially where that curb line is going to be. A lot of the amenities that Todd's talking about, we can decide that as time goes forward, but we need a good idea on it. If we're going to move forward with a 2018 project that incorporates all these design elements, we need to know where the curb line is going to be to start that design.
But, okay, I understand you, but the replacing that whole road was scheduled?
Is scheduled anyway, yeah. We're probably behind schedule on that because we were doing other things moving up to this process, yep, as far as pavement replacement.
I'll just add, there is utility replacement scheduled for that as well, water main, possibly some sewer work as well. So it's not only street, but it is utility driven as well.
All right.
Hi, I'm Kim Larson, and my husband and I own Larson Carpet. I have no voice today, sorry, but we're at 208, and we occupy the building at 212 Walnut as well. Just to give you our 2 cents, we've been in this location since 1982. Prior to that, we were in another location downtown. We love downtown. It's a great place to be. Our business is a little different. We're kind of a destination business, but we employ 6 full-time people. We support 6 families plus ourselves in our business. We need to have Walnut Street open. We have to have access for our customers. We need to have access for our deliveries. We have on the average of probably 2 semis a day come in there and unload freight. Our customers, they probably could find us anywhere we are, But we want to stay where we are. We like to be downtown. We don't want to move our business. We've been there, like I said, for 30-some years. Endless Treasures, which is in the adjoining part of our building, like Bill had mentioned, I've been there for 17 years. They do a phenomenal business. It's amazing how many people go in and out of that door every day. And I know because I hear their doorbell all the time. You know, some of the ideas with the plaza and stuff, they're great. They'd be very cool. Is it for Yankton? You know, I don't know. We've been here a long time. My husband and I were born and raised here. You know, there's some things that you have to keep a small town environment in a small town. We're all for progress, but I think that, you know, downtown has a certain charm to it. And you know, I think this thing that you've proposed with the calmers and the landscaping and stuff is awesome. It looks great. It's inviting to people. What they've done to the Meridian Plaza is really nice. You know, I kind of was a little skeptical about that when they first started doing all that, but it's turned out really good. You know, I just think downtown doesn't need all this, you know, I don't know what to even call it, but the flow of traffic is good the way it is. People can get where they need to go. Years and years ago, excuse me, I was on the Historic Downtown Yankton Board many years ago, and somebody had come up with a study that indicated when people go shopping, if they're going shopping in a downtown area, they want to park within a half a block or so of their destination. You know, if they go to a mall, sure, they'll park clear at the end of the parking lot, they'll walk into the mall, and then they'll shop at the store clear on the other end. That's a whole different entity of shopping. But when in a downtown area, they want to be close to where they're going. And I think we need to keep that, not just for our business, but for everybody's downtown. And yeah, Walnut Street is kind of a parking lot, but you know, these people have no other choice as far as like the businesses at Third and Walnut. That's, you know, that's where they need to park. We need to keep spots open for our customers. So, you know, our proposal or our thoughts, or we like it the way it is, and just with these added things that you've got proposed, just make it that much better for everybody.
Hey, thank you for your comments.
Sure.
And we better get thanks everyone for commenting, and keep the conversation going. We'd love to hear from you again at another meeting. And I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the work study session. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.